Hello there.
Hello.
Hello.
I think everybody that's supposed to be here is here. And Leanne had asked me to help facilitate a little bit and take notes, which might be like trying to walk and chew gum for me. So if you guys want to jump in and start talking, I will take notes. I think our focus was supposed to be on youth and education. And I know she said to focus on the what. So I guess if somebody wants to start with that, that would be awesome.
You know, Commissioner German and I think we had a good conversation with the folks of the Innovation Hub in early December, and I may be just conveying a few thoughts, maybe not in particular order here, but Kevin Rico kind of talked about the challenge of serving youth and connecting them to an entrepreneurial culture. And so we're getting, if the idea is to ensure that our youth have a fantastic educational opportunity within a school system or a school environment, but keeping them in the community. And if they do choose to pursue an entrepreneurial culture, what kind of resources are available for those kids to pursue them going forward. And so that was kind of a big theme of just connecting them to that particular pursuit. And the other kind of comment that Kevin had conveyed is to really try to put that into action. And he really felt like in order to support those particular ideas, those new entrepreneurial ideas, that we need to be surrounded by modeled behaviors in the community, and people that are wanting to start a business maybe don't yet know how to do that, but really trying to embrace an entrepreneurial culture so that the youth can get to know who these people are, so that they can maybe decide to start that business and stay in the community. And so I think just retention of our neighbors and residents is certainly an important component to that, but also providing hope and economic opportunity that families and these youth can stay here and earn a good living. So, well, I think a one year, you know, what success looks like in a year or 3 years, I mean, certainly the pandemic is a part of it, but I think surrounding kids with new open ideas, to certain things that they haven't experienced before is where I think the folks at the hub and maybe some other stakeholders that you all met with as well can help in that regard. So I'm kind of going out of order a little bit, Sarah, but maybe just trying to jumpstart the conversation a little bit.
So I'm just wondering, I mean, for youth, I'm trying to look at what we kind of did. I did a stakeholder group with Boys and Girls Club, and it looks like, you know, a number of people did youth serving organizations. So, I mean, I think that's great. And then they did the college, great. But I mean, there was no school. I don't know. I'm pretty sure we had talked about doing school districts or something like that. I remember in August talking about, you know, even broader than MPS, because a lot of our kids, you know, go to Orchard View or Mona Shores or a charter school or something like that. But I mean, I don't know. I just can't see how we can do youth and education without talking or, you know, understanding how our K-12s are seeing that and how we can help or whatever. I mean, they've got to be the, you know, and I think even the pandemic showed, I mean, you know, what the schools are doing is critical, and the biggest factor in what kids are, you know, they have, you know, resources from food to technology to, you know, has run through the schools. So I don't know. I'm just wondering how to fit that together.
Well, just real quick, I know a lot of others talk. Think the issue of career exploration at that K-12 level is something before I arrived in the city that I know is really being pushed throughout the K-12 system across the state. And so even at the middle school level, high school level, so yes, beyond MPS and into other districts across the county, it's just something that I know is being pushed. And so if you're looking at manufacturing and aerospace and the furniture industry in the area of the city or the county that's predominant, what within those particular industries, how can we develop those partnerships within youth-focused organizations or the school system in order to retain those residents and give them that opportunity.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting what Chauncey presented. Actually, I'm working with Chauncey on that program. He mentioned the college, so we've met with him quite a few times about that. I think his point of view is good. He's also in the school district, but he's really got it's kind of an alternative program, but it's really, that's at the heart of his idea too, is, career readiness and connecting students to realistic opportunities, for employment and things that they feel like they can, actually succeed in. So I thought his input was really, really interesting.
You guys remember, I feel like it was probably 2 or 3 years ago, Frank had sent out maybe it was an email or a letter that kind of laid out MPS's history since the inception of the school of choice thing, that talked, just highlighted the fact that they had gone from, I want to say it was like 7,000 students to 3,000 students in the course of like 10 years. And, that is probably, in my mind, the best way that we can support our youth is to support MPS in a lot of ways. Just from my seat as a public works guy, I'm not, the best guy at knowing how best to, support youth and education. But we can
have kids.
Kids, yeah. But, I kind of recognize the fact that they're undergoing this huge transformation with their bond effort. And there's probably a lot of opportunity for us to look and say, how can we make sure that they're, that we're helping them use those dollars the best way and focus those and, investing in the city and, help steer those decisions a lot is kind of where I see some potential for overlap, at least in my seat.
Well,
Just a quick thought. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Who's that?
thank you.
Okay.
The groups I met with, a couple of groups I met with, which was a common theme with both of them, kind of going off what Pete said, was that they want that connection, like in mentoring, a job sharing. They want to know somebody in the community, business, the connection, the connectability is really what they're looking for to start to learn about a business, how to operate, how to make other connections in the city and build on what everybody else is currently doing. How do they get that jump start? Whether it's, a group of business owners coming in and talking to groups or having one-on-ones. That's kind of the feel that I got from the two groups.
And I'd just like to just kind of chime in also, echoing what Pete talked about when we met with the director down there at the GVSU, that connectability and opportunity for entrepreneurship. Actually, I learned some things as well in that meeting. But I think success, speaking on the topics there, would be for the opportunity to get a quality education from the education piece through Muskegon Public Schools. Also meeting with the young Black professionals, Dave Alexander and I, which was a very productive meeting. I thought they stressed, a strong need for a regional efforts in education and having equal access to quality teachers. With school of choice, some families here that live here in the district, kids don't go to Muskegon Public Schools. They may go to Mona Shores or North Muskegon or where else due to that school of choice. And that kind of puts a stain, it has put a stain on the Muskegon Public Schools that they're not meeting the needs to educate our students. And I think that's something that as a city official leader coming from the city of Muskegon, we can put more emphasis to say, hey, you know, we support the Muskegon Public School District and the students, you know, providing services or resources that would enhance the quality of education, to give students the equal opportunity to say, hey, you know, I have a chance, now I can compete because I've gotten a quality education. We've recruited and got some of the best teachers to teach these courses. And, you know, they'll be ready for college and preparing them. And like the program Chauncey talking about, him and Mr. Hill, the colleges have, we have done initiatives in the past due to the community, Male Community College Collaborative, where we would engage the community and talk about ways to better strengthen and overcome barriers, to engage the community, to work with our students and get students ready for college. More initiatives like that, I think, would just kind of help keep students on the course. And then looking at the demographics and the makeup of the school district, you know, getting comfortable talking about and being straightforward and transparent, as we talked about in some of the meetings here, I mean, a topic in the meeting where you can be open and honest, talk about diversity and inclusion, not being afraid to talk about, you know, racism that goes on in a systemic, you know, institution who marginalize, you know, a certain demographic of students. So, you know, that may be a little bit off topic somewhat, but I think, you know, having those conversations, finding ways strategically to better enhance and make sure that these kids are actually being able to compete, not just at an education level, but when they get out of school, there's opportunities for them, and providing those opportunities in our community where they could actually stay here and not leave. And that was another topic also. One of our former employees who used to work for the city of Muskegon, Samantha Ferguson, and they touched on the issue that the lack of opportunities for young Black professionals, you know, coming out of school, and they're actually leaving the city of Muskegon and going to the east side of the state or out of state. So the opportunities is definitely important, and then having access to people in those places.
I mean, Leo, your team is working on a lot of great, park projects scheduled out. I mean, we don't really want to sell ourselves short on providing recreational opportunities where people can congregate to the very audiences that Commissioner German's talking about. And I think there's a lot of assets and resources across the city, and certainly talk about the number of parks and issues of maintenance and things, but there's also investment going on and taking place. And I think there's just ways for residents and neighbors to interact with each other through the things that we're doing. Mm-hmm. And whether that looks like success in a year or 3 years, I think that's part of your planning schedule as well. I mean, it's just an incremental schedule of what we're doing to maintain public's infrastructure.
One thing, you know, at the college, I don't know how many, there's been so many companies that want to, you know, build their workforce. And so they want to work with Muskegon Public Schools or Muskegon Heights Public Schools or Muskegon Heights Academy or whatever. And, you know, it's really, you know, it has to go beyond. And I think that was what was said, was like these boutique programs or whatever. And also it's really difficult to, like, you know, get people to really do meaningful engagement between youth and employers or something like that, because it's often so short-lived, you know, even if it's like a 6-week program or something like that. And it's also very hard because the people come from such different backgrounds. They don't understand each other. And, you know, I think people see there's so much potential, but the connection is very tough to try and bring the employers or the people who want to mentor and help and stuff like that, you know, to build a real atmosphere or place where actual, it has to be longer term, you know. So I don't really know, you know, where that you know, the skill building, the whole, you know, all the soft skills, everything, where it all comes together and people, you know, transition into the jobs that are out there.
And Commissioner German and I heard that with the folks at the hub regarding the actual physical environment in order to get the kid to the hub. First of all, a challenge of the issue of transportation, and then the issue of just the normal school schedule. What kind of, one, space is available for them over at the hub, and two, what time of the day could we get them, and then three, how many kids could we get all in one environment, and then four, really just is that really the learning environment that, or how could Kevin adapt to a learning environment that's similar to just a regular classroom environment? So yeah, I mean, we heard those things from the folks at the Innovation Hub of how to adapt and connect, you know, literally and figuratively, to be really intentional, because that is hard work. It takes time to.
And I've kind of heard two ways to do it over the years. One is people are like, well, let's just forget about the schools and we'll do it after school or something like that. And then there's the way to work with them, kind of. But man, it is tough for the things that you mentioned, because you know, I've definitely experienced the exact same things about school day and all the parameters they have, and just it's really hard to get in there. So and you know, just the way the schools are doing things, you know, they have their own system, which is built on test scores and foundation funding, and you know, things that reports they got to turn into the state, and you know, that, you know, if they can't do those things, then you know, they won't be around. So you know, they prioritize those things, and you know, so sometimes I think that they recognize the needs, and that they wish they could do more, but within their constraints, they're just, you know, kind of overwhelmed.
I think one thing that is hard to address is you have to get the parents to encourage their children to really work with their children. I can say as a single mom, that's hard to do, to really get your child involved with, I guess if you want to call it extra work beyond just what's assigned at school. It's a difficult thing to do time-wise. It's exhausting when you are a working parent and then you come home and you are trying to do that with your child. And so I think one part of that is, how do we better support parents and get them involved in accelerating their children's education, not just standard education, but in all aspects? How do we get them to start reading to their children earlier? You know, what do we have to do to support those parents so that that education is coming earlier and more often?
And I mean, that's been like, you know, if you talk to people from Muskegon Public Schools, they have like, well, I forget what title it's called, Title 3, 4, some sort of money that there's, you know, they get, and they're mandated to try and get parents involved. But, and you know, I was a parent of an MPS student, and you know, we get the notices, but you know, their participation is not good. And I don't know if it's the way they do it, or, you know, it's just really hard to get participation. And maybe it's because the way that they have to report it, you know, but yeah, it's a conundrum. You know, I know that they wish that they could solve it. I never really believed that they were, you know, the way they did it by setting, you know, I don't know, this is a Title I funded meeting, and you know, we are asking parents to come or something. I didn't really find that very I don't know if hospitable was the right word, but like, you know, motivational. So I don't know what they can do, but I know that there's a lot of money spent on it already. Like, so it's not, yeah, solving it.
That's always the hard question, is how do you solve it? But from what I see, it's definitely a problem. I have a sister-in-law that is a teacher at Muskegon Public, and she had a great student that the minute they transitioned to online learning, he just never turned in an assignment. And, you know, it's because he had that lack of parental involvement. Nobody was there just making sure that he was on the computer doing the assignments. And so what do we have to do to get the parents involved? I don't have the answer. I just think it's something that we need to think about. How do we do that? I'm sure that's a ages-long question that's been talked about for many years, but I think it's definitely a barrier for a lot of students.
I would totally agree with you on that as well. Working in the public school system, years ago, you know, I see the need where parents would not really engage, but now due to the situation and the crisis that we have now, it makes it even a more difficult situation. You know, and, you know, demanding, you know, these resources from the school board. Parents have to get involved, I think, with our local school board and starting to come to the meetings, maybe, and the school board should probably just reach out more also to engage, make it, you know, a day where parents, we're just going to meet with parents, and this is what we're trying to do, and do it more, not just a one-time, you know, due to the situations in crisis, you know, parents are working 2 jobs now. Mom can't pay rent, you know, or, you know, due to a lot of the hardships, it makes it very difficult, you know, and unfortunately, you know, it affects the whole family, you know, the parents, you know, the kids, and we're just in a situation right now where everyone's being infected somehow, you know, due to this pandemic. But most of all, I really think the focus should be on educating these kids, and we have to just kind of reiterate that to the parents, you know, this is your child's education, and we want to do all we can to support and make sure that we push and have the expectations of this student getting through K-12, graduating and being successful and being college ready when they come out. And some of them may not go to college. And like the program with Chauncey was talking about, I remember in high school where, you know, I took some of the vocational classes. I knew what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. You know, the architect, the electronics, you know, the carpentry, you know, and foundry. Well, I knew I didn't want to go into foundry, but if these kids have opportunities and are exposed to this type of stuff, then they can make those decisions. Say, well, hey, I can pick up a trade. This is what I have to do. And then the mentor building, also having, you know, programs like Dan was talking about, people wanting to partner, companies wanting to partner with the college. Take them into these high schools and, you know, hold them accountable. If you want to be a partner with the college, or this is what your focus is, you know, working with college students or high school students, you know, we have to hold them accountable. And as we talked about progress and accountability, I think that's one of the things that we really have to start holding parents accountable for as well, because they are definitely going to be accountable for their children's education.
That was kind of what came up in our group. We did the youth empowerment program, and we asked the group, or there were some kids involved in it, and we asked them about what jobs they know of the city of Muskegon, and they didn't know very many of them. You know, they knew a little bit about the parks because they see people mowing the lawns, but they didn't know we had a planning, you know, department, a community neighborhood services department, finance, everything down, you know, clerk's office, water and sewer, highway department. They know the highway from seeing the plow trucks, but how do you get the kids to know that Lansing Community College has a program for linemen for Consumers Power? That if you go down there and complete that program, you got a really good shot at becoming a lineman. I mean, I bet you if you went and polled kids at Muskegon High School, I bet you not very many of them know that.
It's
It's
really
an interesting side note that we're actually bringing that line worker program to Muskegon. So I don't know how it supposedly we'll get it going by May the 15th, but then kids won't even have to go to Lansing. We're working with consumers. But yeah, it's a hard thing to connect, people to all the opportunities. So, because there's so many. I mean, you just see it all the time. Just so much disconnect of, people who need work or people who need worker like workforce and people who, would be great if they got into the workforce. And it's just, how to get it's like understanding.
I think basically what Dave and Dan were just talking about was a thought I had, again, back to, what the state requires for the curriculum requirements in the K-12 system, and looking for practical opportunities for a kid to understand how to master geometry and algebra and the sciences and those things and you can sit in the classroom all day, but maybe you're just not going to understand it. But if the city of Muskegon, to Dave's point, was intentional about providing a practical, intern opportunity for, freshmen, sophomore, junior, whatever, just acknowledging the difficulty of mastery of complying with some of these requirements and getting a kid through high school and getting them the diploma, and then giving them the hope and opportunity that they can do something that you guys are talking about through that certification program. So it's just, I think it's understanding what one side requires, providing a practical opportunity, and it's just exposing the kid to the opportunity that Dave is just talking about. So, so that they understand what public service is and the role of government, whether that's to create a job or not, but to provide the conditions to see everybody flourish. So I think the integration is absolutely an opportunity where the community like Muskegon can really facilitate that conversation.
I'd say, Doug and Dave can jump in too. One thing we did recently at DPW, we created, or I guess resurrected, a laborer position, which, a kid right out of high school could get if you have a driver's license, was basically the only requirement. We just kind of finished up our first round of screening applicants and hiring and going that route. And we got some really great candidates. But one thing I'll say is I don't think any of them were from the city of Muskegon. So somewhere we made this opportunity that was really geared towards that, but we're not getting it out to the audience and putting it in front of the people that we want to see it somehow. So there's definitely some room to grow there, I think, and figure out what step are we missing on the way to put this in front of the kids we want it in front of. Got somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 employees in Public Works, and I want to say about 9 of them are city residents. So there's a disconnect there. We're not really proportionally to what we're serving. A lot of our people live outside of the city, and we'd like to at least start pushing that in a different direction. So
yeah, to go off a little bit of what Leo said, we really started the program because there was a disconnect for people kids to be able to get jobs and get the skills that maybe all of us had other opportunities to learn those things. We're either introduced to somebody or introduced to a technical or mechanical ability. So we found an opportunity to hire people and we could teach them those skills. I think what parents look at is the school system to teach their kids, because like Sarah mentioned, they don't have the time to interject. They're hoping that we're going to come up with the solutions, and we're going to come up with opportunities, and we're going to come up with a connection for these kids to be able to further themselves, because they're overwhelmed with everything, parents are, with what they have going on. So, like Leo was saying, we started this program to help people to grow. It was kind of a grassroots opportunity for us because we're not able to fill positions. We don't get applicants. We don't have kids that have any formal training in any skills whatsoever. So we took it into our own hands to be able to do that.
Well, if you don't mind me hijacking the conversation a little bit, I guess, does anybody have maybe a definition of success in 3 years' time or in 1 year's time? Do we have something formal that we want to say about it? Or, I mean, that's a tough question, I think, for education.
Yeah,
Not
I
like
mean,
we-
we're just 9 people here on a screen, and I mean, like, Jim shared that one report. I mean, people have, you know, been diving into these data. I don't feel really confident in myself to pick the measure of what would be success. I mean, I feel like I know, you know, we know our city, but we know some dynamics, but I don't think we know. You know, is it high school graduation rates? Is it third grade reading? Is it, you know, I don't know. The only other thing I'd say is, you know, I really, you know, I don't know. I feel like somehow we have to broaden our scope beyond MPS because I don't know. I hate to say it, but you know, MPS does not really represent the youth of our city really anymore. I mean, I bet I don't know each of the programs well, but I know some of them. But you know, if you maybe, but like the YET program, a lot of those kids don't go to Muskegon Public Schools. They go to Orchard View or another district. And then the problem with that is that what do you do? If you're going to measure success, how do you do it outside of that school district? I mean, you know, what could we possibly measure? Because then we're running into like not only different districts, but like whole different ways of running schools. So just some thoughts about, you know, if we were trying to figure out what we would term success or what data point or lever we want to move, you know, how would we start?
I have a couple thoughts on that. I think maybe success could be just being intentional and gathering people to that larger table and being that entity to do that. And whether we have those answers or not, we probably don't, but at least with an entity like the city that can facilitate the desire to make that conversation sustained over that period of time. And I say that because you see all these vacant sites that exist throughout the city, and Frank's desire to repopulate the city with new buildings and housing opportunities. And what does that mean in the next number of years? And with just stabilizing of residency or adding people to the city, and then if they have families, where are they sending their kids? And is MPS, to Dan's point, is that a plausible educational opportunity for them? And so that's kind of one thing I've been thinking about is Frank's doing this infill housing piece is what does a repopulated city look like in 1, 3, 5, 10 years if all of these homes do get built on those sites, and what happens to those families and what kind of opportunities can be provided in a positive way. So I think the city should be facilitating that conversation in that long term, you know, to Sarah's question. And I just use that housing example.
One question is, you know, like I said, in my role at MCC, I kind of am involved in this, and you know, but even to be honest, I mean, you know, the college is a countywide institution, and you know, if you looked at the percentage of our students are from the city of Muskegon, it's probably not as high as it should be. And so, you know, we are trying to promote the success of our students. So, you know, but like the ISD, there's, you know, and like I said, we've been working on it. And so I just would say, you know, I think the question should be, how can the city join the conversation, or what's appropriate? Because the ISDs, you know, there's been a lot of thought, and there's some pretty big strategies for some of this stuff. So, you know, I think just the city all of a sudden calling people up and say, well, you should come down here to 933 Terrace. Um, uh, you know, we should try to understand what they've done to this point.
I think that's a starting point, Pete, though. Looking at ways to engage, you know, families, the public, you know, providing those resources again. You know, I think the bar has to be set a little higher also within the public school system. You know, give them something to reach for, but definitely having those conversations, partnering with, you know, stakeholders or our neighbors, trying to get everyone involved, and, you know, have them look at it as a sense of urgency. I mean, because it's definitely a sense of urgency, because if we don't, you know, I just feel that our kids are being lost, and kids are the future, you know, and a lost community, you know, is not good for the city of Muskegon. A lot of them don't have, you know, the opportunities that other families may have. And I think Doug touched on some opportunities where, you know, certain students or former employees had opportunities or were able to have access to certain things, and they, you know, were being taught. Well, some of these kids don't have that opportunity. You know, me being a grandfather and, you know, a father of three, you know, in the education system, you know, I've had the pleasure and blessing to teach my children, but also teach my grandchildren and prepare them, you know, to read, you know, at a level by third, you know, at third grade, you know, reading at 6th and 7th grade levels, you know, and just having that quality education sitting in front of a teacher who understands the culture also. And again, I might be just going off the topic just a little bit, but you know, I'm just sharing with you what I've experienced and what I've seen in the Muskegon public school system as an educator, implementing technology in the classroom for the first time back in the early 2000s, and the schools failing, and it's more the same if the teachers in that classroom don't understand the culture in that school. A lot of them can't relate. So kids mostly identify with their surroundings. You know, me being a Black man coming into a classroom with Black students, you know, doesn't mean that, oh, okay, I'm going to have a success rate, but those kids can identify, you know, or it means that they can't learn from a woman from the LGBT community or a woman that's white or Caucasian. It's just understanding the culture, understanding the kids, having the willingness to teach and understand. So I think success for me would say, hey, you know, we sit down and have those conversations, and I don't have all the answers, but it's a start, and we strategically put some plans together and say, hey, you know, let's try this. Have we tried this? What works? What seemed to work? And we'll build on this. But at the same time, we just can't not do anything, you know.
I think the word opportunity has been said like 100 times in this little 9-person discussion. And I think I don't know if it was Baker or somebody had actually used that as their word up front. I mean, that seems like a big recurring theme to me is how do you expose our youth and get the opportunities in front of them that exist in the city that, you know, either we have or we know of that they might not. You know, that's seems like a gap right there. And maybe that's something we could focus on and work towards, you know, how do we make those connections and get the opportunities in front of people that need them.
I think you start that early on. I think, like Pete mentioned, you interject with the school system, you bring out opportunities and inclusion by showing, you know, these kids junior high, high school, you know, here's professionals, here's people in the community, here's business owners, here's a connection you're going to have. You're going to start it at an early age, bring it on. Here's the job opportunities. Here's where we're lacking. You know, I see so many, you know, technical jobs, and, you know, it may be in plumbing or, you know, heating or cooling or something. Kids aren't going to that anymore. Well, you know, people are lacking in hiring that, but there's opportunity out there. If you get that connection, whether it's that or a professional or something else, and you get the business owners to come in to the school, we start the conversation with the school and grow from that. You know, you have that connection. These kids start knowing people like ourselves and community leaders and business owners as well as we know each other right now. I mean, that's what's missing, is the connection there. Like Leo said, the opportunity. We have to present that opportunity to them in order for it to grow. So, you know, you start out with that and you grow to the point when these kids leave school or go off to college, they have a path, they have some ideas of where you could land, where you could be, what possibilities are. And those constantly change. You know, one day you need a plumber, the next day you need a, you know, IT person. You know, we don't know, it's ever changing. So to have that start in the school and grow from that and grow the relationships and present the opportunity is probably a pretty good path.
And finances are always going to be a challenge to do anything, you know, whether it's creating a program or paying somebody. But I think just acknowledging it can be a win-win for both sides. I mean, if the city has needs, whether that's through a paid internship opportunity, you know, out at your shop, or like with Jim, you know, and it's exposing a kid and it alleviates a task that we're not able to get to, and this person's able to tackle it. So it's a win-win. We were able to get something out of it. The kid's able to develop a skill and then an interest, whether that's, you know, maintains in a public service environment or somewhere else. It's just who goes first. You know, I just think if again, finances are a challenge, we have a need, let's create that connection point.
I think there's quite a few ways to do opportunities. I mean, I know the Career Tech, they run, you know, the Career Tech Center runs a lot of open houses where they get employers to come in. I mean, maybe it's just the city, maybe the success is just how many students or how many events do we get out to where we, you know, show off our opportunities or something like that.
I know Michigan Works, you know, facilitates a number of kids throughout the county, and they take them to Grand Rapids for something where I know Grand Rapids has a presence, and some other municipal service organizations are present. I mean, I saw last year there. So.
Dave and Doug, I mean, I'll ask you guys because you've been here longer than me. What was our, you know, seasonal hiring like before we switched over to using a temp? Did we have a different group of people that, you know, tended to work for us seasonally than what we have now? I feel like now we don't draw a lot of, you know, high school or college age kids to come work for us seasonally. Was that different historically, or?
Yeah, you know, back in the day, it was, you know, kids going off to school or summer jobs. It was more people in the city, more kids in the city were working. And now it just doesn't seem to be that. You know, kids don't look for the summer job. They don't look for a job before they go off to college as much. So, you know, we're having a wide group of people come in, but it's not traditional like you had said, Leo.
One thing I like to say also with, you know, the youth, you know, I'm born and raised here in the city of Muskegon, been here all my life. And one of the things that I was looking to do right out of high school was to leave Muskegon and say, hey, you know, it's nothing here. I've seen it all, you know, plans changed, couldn't go. So I said, hey, I have to make the best of, you know, living here in the city of Muskegon. You know, at that time, there were guys in the community, in the neighborhood, who were mentors. Smith Ryerson Park, Mr. Roland Jones. Some of you may know him. He ran that community center there, and he was very inspirational in my life. You know, you could speak with him, talk with him. There were activities engaged in the community. You know, it just kind of kept you focused. And now this generation is facing a whole different scenario where they're exposed to a lot of gun violence, drugs, and it's just things that would just put barrier after barrier in front of these students. And then not only that, parents became victims of those drugs because they started using. So that whole, you know, and we know drugs don't discriminate, you know, just like, you know, this pandemic. So there was a downward spiral of, you know, growth in the community, kids being able to stay focused, absence from school. In the last, I would say 10 years, I've seen that come up. And, you know, the drug war, you know, cleaning up the communities, making it safe. And a lot of this started to happen around 2010, I say. If that momentum can stay and continue and have a good quality of life for our students and families, and for affordability, for affordable housing, and you give them the necessities and make them available and opportunities, then things would change. I think each and every one of us, you know, in a real world wants the same thing, you know, health, you know, safe environment, the best, you know, for our kids, our, you know, opportunities for job, and just to live happy. You know, if you give those things, or those things are available for everyone, it levels the playing field. But you have to have access to them. You have to have the opportunity, and, you know, those different disparities creates, you know, a downward spiral for communities, you know, and the ones that's been hit the hardest are the ones who are unfortunately not able to you know, partake in those opportunities.
Well, does that beg the question, Commissioner German, on one of the questions, what 3 things do you need to do to stop what you need to stop doing? And I heard a few of those things in your comments, but I mean, what would you say about what we should stop doing?
What we should stop. Thank you.
And to reverse that.
Yeah. I think what we should stop doing is not being more inclusive, you know, and I think in our conversations with our community, you know, we should value the input of the whole community of the city of Muskegon. I think the city, and just my experience, sometimes we don't engage them enough to make sure that their input is considered. Like the facilitator was saying earlier, that a lot of them do their research. They have the answers, and I engage them all the time because, you know, being a commissioner for about 10 years, you know, they've lived in this community longer than I have. They have a better understanding and knowledge. So I think we should not shut them out, but open up and try to engage the community more and get that community input from, you know, the neighbors, the stakeholders, to help us guide us strategically on a plan for the future and enhancing, you know, the future for the city of Muskegon.
I caught you all in a moment of silence.
You did.
Yeah, we haven't been silent.
You haven't been silent. I'm sure
No.
not. I'm sure not. I don't want to interrupt the flow of things. I'm just sort of doing the rounds and checking in to see how things are going and how you're feeling about the time, your progress against the time. So.
Been a really good discussion, but I was going to ask Sarah, how do you feel we've come addressing the questions that were kind of laid in front of us? I think we kind of let things just they wanted to go for a long time. Maybe we got to try to nail down on those questions and really, because I'm sure Beth's going to ask you to present when this is all done.
I'm sure she is too.
I am.
Um, you know,
Yes.
I think we all kind of came to a common consensus of success, and that is getting the opportunities in front of the youth and making sure that the ability to make connections is there. I kind of put down that we need to compile a list of what's out there and grow those connections, and that to us is a way to get to success.
That'd be a good one-year plan, to really understand what's out there before we jump in, and because it's going to take some time. I don't know that it'd take a whole year, but it's certainly going to take some time to understand all this.
Right.
I appreciate the point that Jim is, at least part of what I'm picking up from that is that there might be some questions that need to be answered as you proceed. And so to make note of those as part of this process. So what's the info, not only who needs to be at the table, but what information do you need that you don't currently have?
Right. I think we identified a lot of questions.
No shortage of questions. Right?
No. As far as like the 3 things that we need to keep doing and stop doing and start doing, as far as keep doing, I put down identifying the connections that we have to the youth, and growing those connections that already exist. And then we mentioned working to gain that parental involvement. How do we get those parents to encourage their children? As far as what to stop doing, I think taking from Commissioner German's comments, I put on there, we need to really stop taking exclusionist views maybe. We need to value all input, not just look at some input. I'm finding that stop piece a little bit harder to answer. And then as far as what we need to start doing, just going back to what we said success was, offer more connections, more opportunities for those students to get connected to, the career world, and open them to ideas of things that exist that they maybe don't know. Other than that, I wrote down a lot of the stuff we said, but I don't know that really answers the questions. It was just a lot of things that I think we were all just giving input.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I think that's good.
Yeah.
It covers it, yeah.
Yeah. And so maybe, use a little bit of time to talk about that progress and accountability piece. I see that Deborah shared something in the chat there, and as did Jim. So if you were to take maybe until about 10 after 12, would that feel like about enough time to kind of finalize your thoughts?
I think so.
For this round? Does that feel good?
Just a quick question. Also, Ms. Warren wanted to know, could she have input, or is that okay?
And that's a good question, and I'm not sure what the protocol is.
Okay.
Does someone else have experience with that?
Well, she's in here and might as well grab the input, or.
I know she's been
Does that make
typing
sense?
comments in the chat, and I have been kind of jotting down some of the points from her comments as well, because I think her comments are addressing a lot of what we said. I don't really know what the Open Meetings Act says, and as far as having other people involved in the conversation, but I have been jotting down notes from her chat comments as well.
Terrific. Thank you for that. Okay. Well then, let's aim for 12:10, and I'll do a broadcast message about 5 minutes before then, just to give you a heads up to wrap up. So we'll see you back again soon.
Okay,
Thanks for everything you're doing so far.
All right, so who wants to jump in with how we'll measure progress? I'm sure there's a simple answer to that. Crickets to that one, just crickets.
Number of meetings? I'm not sure.
Number of meetings, people involved, number of people involved.
You're trying to measure the end goal of getting people jobs and opportunities. I mean, is there a way to quantify people that we bring into a program or see transition through that program from high school to gainful employment as a result of a opportunity or connection that they got with us?
That's hard enough even for the college.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Actually, we know the way, the state just won't let us. We need information to their unemployment information, unemployment insurance information.
And maybe it's not something that can necessarily be measured. I mean, maybe it's something that looks more like our school system is more of a draw to keep the students that it has. And we have families that want to move into the area because we have a strong school system. You know, it might not be something that can necessarily be measured like normal people would measure something. It might be more of the view of it has changed. I don't know if that makes sense, but.
Does Muskegon Public Schools, I mean, is their enrollment still on a decline, or has that kind of stabilized or corrected? I mean, that's a.
I think they had some interesting data for the fall, but it was so impacted by the pandemic. So I forget what it was. Elementary and high school were different. I remember talking to Superintendent Cortez, and one of them improved and one of them decreased. So I'm not sure which it is, but that's been an ongoing thing. I'm sure we could find out. Yeah, and that's a very basic, stat. Just, and it, well, it kind of comes once a year. Yeah. Problem is people make a lot of it, kind of, and it's, I don't know. Sometimes it's kind of a gotcha, and it's due to factors that are not entirely under their control. But kind of like the population of the city of Muskegon, it's pretty basic. And also, I guess I just wonder again a little bit with the city, the youth living in our city is so much broader. So, I don't know if we're getting a full picture of like how our youth are doing. So. Maybe some of those broader things like we were talking about, engaging other like ISD or things like that would be helpful because they represent more school districts and a broader approach to it.
I know, could we do a survey of, parents and youth and somehow get those youth to participate or at least let us know how they're feeling? And, we might not see everything the way that the youth see it. Mm-hmm. And they could bring up some great points we're all missing. I don't know. We definitely need to know what's out there already, so we're not reinventing the wheel, and so we can move forward, so we can figure out what to apply our energy to that's going to be most effective. Mm-hmm. It's hard. It's really hard. I mean, I have, I could do something with take an intern or a couple of interns, but I'm only touching a couple lives. I mean, imagine all these, really what needs to be is a classroom, but, a fun way for the kids to learn. Like in my area, I'm thinking robotics or, maybe some Python programming, or get them excited to simple stuff to get them to see that you can do this, anybody can do this and make this happen. And here are all these opportunities. I mean, there's a whole world of opportunities out there for youth where they can work from home, they can do all kinds of stuff. And it doesn't require a ton of education. But anyway, yeah, it's daunting.
You almost have to follow along what you're saying, Jim. You almost have your 2 interns that come in there, and have to have it a program through the school where they have to go back and report what they've learned and what they've seen to a classroom, so that they all get a chance to experience that kind of.
Yeah, or maybe have the kids, they all partake, take turns partaking in that internship somehow. I don't know how that looks, the final product, but maybe something like that. So you can touch more instead of just a couple.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some things
the
out there.
ISD has a person who, Sassaman Parker, who that's her whole job is workplace experience for Career Tech kids. So that's the whole thing. But she could probably be a good resource about how workplace learning works. And then it would be a matter of working with whoever has the kids to get them from that system to the workplace learning system.
It would be fun to be able to have a group of kids that could come and see all the different things we do as a city government and just learn about all the different areas that exist. Because we really all do such different things, and yet they probably have no idea all the different things that exist just in our one organization.
But all the things that we do, based on the variety, they're experiencing at that middle school, high school level. It's just organization and structure, and
right.
That's.
Is
what
there?
they're being
I
exposed
know
to.
we've said before. There's a lot of organizations that probably already do this work and probably do it better than we can do it as a city. Do we already provide financial support to groups like Boys and Girls Club or anything like that? I mean, we should look at maybe making a priority to say, look, we want to find 2 or 3 partners that are already doing this work and help financially support them, and let them, the experts, bring some ideas and recommendations back to us, and help us become better in that way. Money might be an easy thing for us to put some support behind, and pick a group that we feel comfortable is going to help serve our goals too.
Financial support can be tricky under municipal finance rules. A lot of times cities aren't allowed to support organizations like that financially. It would probably have to be more of a, other types of resources that we could provide, just as a consideration. I mean, it'd be nice if we could say, yeah, this is a worthwhile group to support, but a lot of times we aren't allowed to financially do that.
I do know, the Boys and Girls Club is quite active in this, and I've been in quite a few meetings with them where they've been trying to figure out the same problem, so maybe just offering ourselves as, the relationship. And I did the Boys and Girls stakeholder meeting, and they had a lot of requests for the city, but maybe one of those is willingness to do tours, or because I think that they have a good structure, and they know a lot of the issues about getting the kids and dealing with the parents and transportation and the myriad of things that go into all that kind of stuff. But maybe expanding what kind of we do with them from, to more of that suggestion of how can we help with our employees actually interacting with your kids, not just setting up the park or something like that. And I think there's some other ones too. Maybe, like I said, I'm just only thinking of that one because I did that stakeholder meeting, but there was some other youth oriented ones. So I think the YEP program. So
So maybe for measuring progress, we can just say, we want to look at the relationships that we have strengthened, that we've increased our involvement.
mhm.
You know, that's what we're going to look at to see if we're making progress toward our goal. I don't know if we're going to come up with an easily identifiable,
Mhm.
measurable statistic per
Yeah.
se, but
Right.
I think it would be doable to look at our connections and go, look, these employees are now involved in this organization that weren't before. So obviously we've strengthened that relationship or something like that.
Yeah, if I'm looking at the Boys and Girls Club one now, you know, that was really a lot of what they were saying when they said, how could we work together was, you know, connecting Boys and Girls Club staff to resources to help keep kids in the city. So wages are low. They need education to advance. Humanize city staff to eliminate biases held by kids, parents, and some staff. You know, find untapped community potential in youth and citizens. I mean, I think that they would welcome kind of ongoing, and I think that was one of the things that I remember a little bit was, you know, we, you know, maybe turn it from like transactional to more of a ongoing thing, and maybe we identify a couple of groups that work with youth to kind of change the nature of that.
And the last question that Beth had on there was, what does accountability look like? And I feel like that really ties into the measure progress thing. As far as, again, I don't know that it's an easily identifiable statement.
I think just maybe an overall commitment to that establishment of connections, and like Jim was saying, just after a year, if you inventory those needs, okay, so that's a step of reevaluating or revisiting, but making that concerted effort to be committed could be a mild answer to the accountability question, without being able to control certain things in this process.
Yeah, I think accountability is like coming back to it and making sure it hasn't fallen off the radar. I mean, I think, you know, I'm accountable to projects at work when I have to make a monthly report about them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I know you guys do. Everybody on this call can sympathize.
Yeah. Especially the commissioners. Good grief. Oh, yeah. Yeah, Jim, that's my wife just put that up. I can't tell some other people's backgrounds, but yeah, she's pretty proud of that.
Yeah, it's nice. Yep.
Where was was it Chauncey that spoke during the public comment? Where does he work at?
He works at Muskegon Public Schools, and he works for MCEC, which is for a lack of a better way, like the alternative education program so it's what used to be at Angel, and then when they, you know, moved it to the main high school campus, so they're kind of like in, I think one of the buildings that's going to be torn down, I forget what they always call them.
Maybe
near
in
the
J building.
Yeah, it's near the, I think it's not in the J building, but it's right next to the J building. It's the old hospital building there on the corner, by that north parking lot. So, and Paul Kurtzel, who's a city resident, is the principal of that school. So yeah.
He said something about city as a school, and I don't know why it took me so long, but I had sat in on a meeting with a bunch of Orchard View staff that was kind of at that same concept. So
Yep. Yeah. Josh Smith from the city or he lives in the city. He used to work for Muskegon Middle School, I think, as the principal. Now he's a principal of Orchard View Middle School, I believe. He's super passionate, and he's really good friends with John. They have and that's actually pretty cool because, to be honest, like I said, that kind of typifies what we need in terms of the relationship between what lack of a better way to put it, the suburban districts and Muskegon Public Schools, because, you know, I think Josh has a passion because he lives in the city, but he also knows that a lot of the students at Orchard View Middle School are City of Muskegon residents. You know, so he's always been willing to go above and beyond to try and, you know, work with Chauncey and brainstorm with his old colleagues at MPS. So they're a great resource when it comes to the actual districts.
that's good to hear. I said I don't remember Chauncey being in that meeting. Josh was there, and Simeon from Orchard View. And,
Yep. Yeah, they're all in the same group. I've been in a number of meetings with them too on the college side, and they're the same group, and they've kept meeting. They still really have a vision for.
Good. Hopefully that comes together, because that fits really well with what this is. You know.
Yeah, I think they're a good group to identify as for further whatever interaction. MCEC.
Yep. City as a School program, I think, is what they're calling it, or what's their title kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I do think I kind of have an outline of responses to Beth's questions. So I guess if anybody else has anything else they want to add.
Hey, Sarah, maybe we can have Beth allow us to go first, since you and I have that 1 o'clock meeting.
I know it. I was thinking that too. And I was thinking if it runs late, if you want to just jump on that, then I'll get on as soon as this one's done.
Okay.
I'm going to run out for a quick minute. I got a crying kid in the other room, so I will be right back.
Yeah, so I think we'll get sent back to or we can leave the room already. We'll probably get returned back to the main one.
Okay. I think if we're all done, I'm going to stop recording at this point then, if I can figure out how.